When Harold turned 58, he felt a familiar weight pressing on him. Not from his job, not from health issues, but from the creeping sense that retirement was coming faster than he expected, and he wasn't ready. Not financially, not emotionally. His life had been one long hustle, working as a project manager in the construction industry, raising 2 kids with his wife, juggling bills, emergencies, and the occasional vacation squeezed in between 60-hour weeks. He hadn't been reckless with money, but he hadn't been particularly strategic either. He had a 401k that he paid into automatically, a house that still had a small mortgage, a savings account that barely earned interest. And while he didn't live paycheck to paycheck, he also didn't have the kind of cushion that gave him confidence to step away from work for good. So Harold started asking questions. Quietly at first, Googling retirement calculators, reading articles at night on his phone, trying to figure out if he'd really have enough. Then more urgently, talking to a financial advisor, digging into the details of his Social Security benefits, and finally having that honest conversation with his wife, Carla, about what they wanted retirement to actually look like. He realized quickly that the biggest retirement regrets weren't just about money. They were about missed opportunities, poor timing, and not understanding the rules of the game early enough. He didn't want to be another story in a retirement forum, warning others about what not to do. So he made a decision. He was going to learn everything he could now, before it was too late. He also subscribed to Finance Family, because if he was going to get serious, he needed guidance that didn't talk down to him or flood him with jargon. He needed practical, clear strategies that applied to real people like him. One of the first things Harold wished he'd done sooner was start saving more aggressively, earlier. He looked back and realized that small contributions in his 30s and 40s could have compounded into serious wealth if he'd just been a little more consistent. The power of compounding wasn't just a theory, it was a missed opportunity. He couldn't change the past, but he could make the most of the time he had left. So he upped his 401k contributions, maxed out his Roth IRA, and even looked into a health savings account, something he'd overlooked for years. Then there was the house. It had always been their anchor, but now it was a question mark. They loved it, sure, but did they need the space? Could they afford the property taxes, maintenance, and unexpected repairs well into their 70s? Downsizing wasn't an emotional decision at first, it was a numbers game. But as they looked at smaller homes closer to their kids and started picturing less upkeep and more flexibility, the idea became appealing. Not just financially, but mentally. Less house meant less stress and more freedom. Healthcare also loomed large. Harold had always taken employer-provided insurance for granted. But what happens when that safety net disappears? He started looking into Medicare options, learning quickly that coverage wasn't automatic or universal. There were timelines, penalties, and decisions to make about supplemental plans and prescription drug coverage. And then there was the cost of long-term care, something his parents had struggled with, and he didn't want to leave Carla burdened by. He also had a tough conversation with himself about debt. He wasn't drowning in it, but credit cards, a car loan, and that lingering mortgage all added pressure. Retirement with debt isn't impossible, but it's certainly harder. So they made a plan, aggressively pay off what they could over the next few years. Every dollar they freed up in their monthly budget would be a dollar they didn't have to worry about later. But it wasn't all about cutting back. Harold wanted to enjoy retirement, not just survive it. So he and Carla created what they called their dream list. It wasn't extravagant, no yachts or villas in Tuscany, but it was meaningful. Visiting the national parks in an RV, taking a cooking class in New Orleans, volunteering part-time at the community garden. These weren't just retirement activities. They were rewards for decades of hard work. And for the first time in a long time, Harold felt excited. Not because he had all the answers, but because he had a plan. He was taking control. He was asking questions. And he was refusing to coast blindly toward retirement like so many others he'd seen. His biggest lesson? Retirement isn't something you do at 65. It's something you plan for at 35, 45, 55, and every year in between. It's a mindset shift, a decision to look ahead instead of looking back with regret. Harold wasn't trying to be perfect. He was just trying to be prepared. And for the first time in a long time, he slept a little easier. Harold's journey didn't end with the plan, it was only beginning. Every financial decision he made now was through the lens of one key question. Will this help us live the life we want in retirement? And that clarity made even tough calls easier to make. One of the smartest things Harold did next was schedule regular retirement check-ins with Carla. Not stuffy meetings with spreadsheets and pie charts, but coffee table conversations where they looked at where they stood. Were they saving enough? Were their goals changing? Did they feel aligned on what their post-work life looked like? These talks weren't just financially helpful, they brought them closer together. Retirement wasn't just about money, after all. It was about what came next for them as a couple. They also started testing their retirement lifestyle. Not in theory, but in practice. For a few months, they lived as if they were already retired. They cut back their spending to what their projected retirement budget would be. They didn't touch their full income, just the portion they expected to have when they were no longer working. It was an eye-opener. Some things were easier than expected. Others, like how much they spent on eating out or helping their grandkids, needed adjusting. But the exercise gave them confidence and helped them catch gaps in their plan before they made anything permanent. Another thing Harold did that he wished he'd done years earlier was start talking to his adult kids about money. Not in a lecturing way, but in an open, honest dialogue. He didn't want to burden them, but he also didn't want to leave them guessing if something happened unexpectedly. He shared where key documents were, what kind of insurance he had, what his financial goals were. And in turn, his kids started asking questions about their own financial futures. It created a ripple effect, a legacy that wasn't just about money, but about mindset. Harold also discovered the hidden power of Social Security planning. He'd always assumed he'd claim his benefits as soon as he was eligible, but once he learned how much more he could receive by waiting a few years, he paused. The difference between claiming at 62 versus waiting until 70 was thousands of dollars each year for the rest of his life. It changed the way he approached the final stretch of his career. He decided to work a bit longer, not out of necessity, but out of strategy. It gave them breathing room, more time to save, more time to prepare, and a bigger monthly benefit when he did retire. He also explored passive income options. Not the scammy, overnight kind, but steady, low-maintenance streams that could supplement his retirement income. He looked into dividend-paying ETFs, real estate investment trusts, and even renting out a small property they owned. Nothing flashy, just dependable income that worked in the background while they enjoyed their lives. But perhaps the most surprising shift for Harold was psychological. He'd always thought of retirement as a finish line, a final destination after a lifetime of work. But the more he planned, the more he realized, it's just the next chapter. And like any chapter, it needs clarity, purpose, and intentional design. He didn't want to wake up one day without a job and without a plan for his time. So he explored volunteer work, part-time consulting, and hobbies he'd shelved for decades. Retirement wasn't about doing nothing. It was about doing what mattered. Carla felt the shift too. Together, they became more mindful, not just about spending, but about living. They took more walks, cooked more meals together, visited family more often. They weren't waiting for retirement to start enjoying life. They were easing into it now. And while they didn't have millions in the bank or a financial team at their disposal, they had something just as valuable: intention. Every dollar, every decision, every plan was aimed at building a retirement that felt fulfilling, secure, and true to them. If there's one thing Harold hopes others take away from his experience, it's this: start now. Don't wait until the last minute. Ask the hard questions. Look at the numbers. Talk to your partner. Talk to your kids. Learn what you don't know. Because the earlier you start, the more options you have, and the fewer regrets you carry. Retirement isn't just a financial milestone. It's a life transformation. And like all transformations, it's better when it's planned with care, purpose, and heart. If this story helped shift your perspective or sparked a thought, let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll catch you in the next one.